I'm Qias Baloch, the founder and CEO of Logicubes, and you're listening to the S.M.E podcast.
You are now listening to the next great small business podcast. Welcome to the S.M.E Stories podcast, where it is all about small businesses in Canada. And here's your host, Ken Alfred.
Hey everybody, thanks for downloading the show. We got a great episode today with Qias Baloch. Now, Qias Baloch is actually the owner and founder of Logicubes. Logicubes is an e-learning company. So basically what they've done, they've helped a lot of small and medium-sized companies transform their in-person training to modern and accessible e-learning platforms to achieve their highest ROI on their training. They've also supported large digital training companies in completing their time-sensitive projects through rapid, just-in-time development systems. So it's going to be very interesting that we're going to be having today, because now we're in the training space, and especially with the e-learning space. So I think Qais is going to have some great stories. So sit back and absorb. All right, guys, we have Cass. How are you doing, my friend?
Doing well, thank you. And yourself?
I'm doing all right. We're filming this a day before Remembrance Day, and any day closer to the weekend is closer than the day before. So that's always a good thing. So excellent. So you ready, excited, ready to go?
Yep, let's rock and roll.
All right. So Logicubes, what's your story?
Yeah, it's interesting because we're in the business of e-learning. So what we do is we develop a lot of digital training solutions and things like that. But I almost got into it by accident, right? I've always had an entrepreneur in me since I was a kid, but it was a lot of learning, a lot of journey. I don't know if you want me to unpack it right now, or we can talk about it as we go.
Unpack it, my friend. This is your story. Tell us your story.
Yeah, so I grew up in. I was born in the Middle East, but then my family moved to Pakistan, where my the ancestral place is in Karachi. I spent about 6 to 8 years of my developmental age or years in Karachi, from 6 to I think 14. I was there. So during that time, the place is very populated. It has a lot of local people, as well as a lot of people migrate there to find work. So I lived in this area where there were some migrant workers as well. And I was 10 at the time, and I had a friend who was the son of a migrant worker. So they weren't that well off. Obviously, they would do labor work. And so, we used to play together. We used to have fun together, but there were things that he couldn't afford. And that's when it kind of hit me that economy plays a big role, right? How to improve the standard of living. Obviously, I didn't think of these things back then, but now in retrospect, I would. So that kind of hit me, and then I try to solve that, right? And what I did was, one of those like carnival type games, right? Like
Oh
those
yeah.
with rings and whatnot. So there were the local version of those games. So I set those up and started charging the local kids per session, and whatever money we got, we kind of give it to that buddy of mine, so he too can afford those toys and we can play together. So that was another insight I learned way back, how you can get money through creating value. So that was entertainment we were selling. So fast forward, when I was 14, my family migrated to Canada, went to school. I went to McMaster for 1 year. I wanted to do life sciences, like any, I guess, any immigrant kid that comes from South Asia has these aspirations to either becoming a doctor or a lawyer or an engineer. So I tried following that track. It wasn't meant for me. So I did 1 year there. I changed school. I actually went to University of Ontario, IT. It's called UIT in Oshawa. They now changed their name to Ontario Tech. So I joined the business program there. 4 years I studied business, got out. So when I graduated in finance in 2012, that was when the global economic meltdown was happening. So there were no jobs. It was bad time to graduate and find banking jobs, right? So got out, looked for jobs for almost a year, and then a buddy of mine, he reached out and just asked if I wanted to try my hands with e-learning development. I had no clue what it was. So that was the
What's
accident of my
e-learning? What's that all about, right?
exactly. I mean, why that was first. I had no clue. I never heard of that word. I didn't even know instructional design or e-learnings or these careers existed. Right. So I thought about it. I said, sure, I can give it a try. But before doing that, I actually started my first venture. So that my first startup was called Cryogenation, and that almost again I had that. Like I said, there was a bit of entrepreneur. There was always in me. I always wanted to create value. So Cryogenation was essentially a digital marketing company, but very visual based. So in my university years, I got a hang of how to use a DSLR camera. I became pretty okay at taking digital photos, right? That was the creative expression. So, so I decided one day, you know what? I have a camera, I have a tripod. Why don't I just approach all these real estate agents and ask them if they need their listings, um, if I can take high definition or HDR photos for their listings, and they can put them up in their portfolio. So it just increases their chances of selling, right? In other words,
And sorry, what year was this? What year is this, Cass? That
this
you
I
said
would say
you're
would
doing
be
the
2013, maybe end of 2012 when I graduated, right?
and still there's some real estate agents that do not have good pictures for any of their listings right now.
Exactly,
So
exactly. And
you tapped into that market very, very smartly, my friend.
yeah, when I got into it and it picked up really well. It was just me and another buddy of mine, and I asked one of my sisters. She actually helped cold call all these realtors. So we made a list of like 10,000 realtors in Excel one by one, and just calling and reached out. We got some traction. I got some recurring clients and all that. But one year into it, I realized that uh, I wasn't able to scale it, right? So it's more started more as a side gig, right? And although the timing was right, I mean, imagine now during the COVID, if you had that, with all the virtual listings and everything, it would have been great timing. But so I had to wrap it up because of obviously with my first real venture, didn't have a team to scale and all that stuff. So that's when I got that text from my one of my buddies asking if I can try e-learning. I said, sure. I mean, what would it take? Right. He said there are certain softwares that you got to learn. I said, are there certifications? He said, no, just Google them, self-learn. So I did that. I learned a few softwares, and then he also helped me get my first contract at one of the e-learning companies. So these guys were third-party developers, and once I got that contract, was on call basis. So every week I would send an email asking if there's work, can I come in? And if there was, I would. If not, then no. So that was all happening, and
Sorry,
yeah,
sorry, Cass. Sorry, Cass. 1 second. You're kind of coming in and out, so that's what I want to see. Is everything on? Actually, here, can you pause for 1 second? I think my
yeah,
wife's
yeah,
trying to vacuum right now. I'm just going to tell her to stop vacuuming in the middle of our show right here.
no
Sorry,
problem.
1 second. Apologies for that, Cass. How's your internet on your side? Because there were some moments you're kind of choppy in and out. Did you notice as
Um,
well, or
all right, it seems okay. Is it better now?
okay? Maybe it's, yeah, I'm wondering because I think she was plugging in and vacuuming. I don't know if that should have anything to do with the internet, but
Nah.
that's weird nonetheless. So
Yeah.
sorry, I know. So let's go back to that here. So you were talking about you were taking some courses. and these are actually self-learning courses you're talking about, right? It wasn't
Yeah,
a
and a
big
lot of it
certification that you see.
exactly, and a lot of it was, I know back then it was lynda.com, which was big, and then a lot of Google and YouTube and all that. So there wasn't any certification or anyone teaching them. You just download a demo of the software, you learn it yourself, and then you learn as you go, right? So a lot of learning on the job, and obviously that has always been one of the traits I had, and so I got that from there, and I got a full-time contract after that. And then as things built on, I got a full-time job at one of the big five banks in their learning team. I worked there almost for 2 years, and then that entrepreneurial itch came out again. I'm like, you know what? I wasn't meant to trade my time for money. I've always been about creating value. How do I do that? But this time I had a good platform. I knew e-learning. I learned the tool. I became very proficient at many tools. So I just started. I called my manager. I said I'm calling it quits, and she said why at the time. And I said I'm starting my own e-learning company. So this was 4 years ago. 2018 was when I made that call, and I just you know what, I started my own company. I started building a team this time, and with that team, I could grow, and we served so many clients, and we built a lot of e-learnings. Some of them were end to end, transforming their in-person trainings into e-learnings, and also um, helping a lot of other e-learning companies uh, develop for them. So we became like their dev house. We still are. So we did over 1,000 hours of development work, and I call myself the firefighter type developer, because these companies, whenever they're crunched on time, whenever they don't have resources, so that's when I get the call to put out a fire. So we jump
Wow.
in, we do it last minute, we get it delivered somehow, and so far the record, I mean, we have 100% track record of delivering, nothing missed, no issues, and finger crossed it's gonna stay that way.
Fingers crossed. So that's what's very unique about your story cast here is that it wasn't that you just started your own e-learning platform because you could have easily just said, I'm just gonna go after companies that just, and just do their e-learning for them, like you said, and transform their in-person training to e-learning and screw everybody else. But you actually found also another one for you could almost call them, rivals or competitors, but actually helping them out developing their thing as well. So, it shows that because I think for a lot of small business owners, someone gets uber competitive for certain things and they feel like they can't share anything. But I think we can all agree on that sometimes there's way more clients out there than maybe we can all handle at once. Right? Like I use the old personal training analogy when I used to be a personal trainer. This is before or the online training thing came in. Was you could only train so many people in a given day,
Yeah.
and how many people need at that time training that you got to share it. I mean, there's no way to you can't do everybody at once. So it's nice to see that you're very you're friendly to your rivals as well as to the clients themselves. So how big of a team do you guys have right now?
Right now, my development team is so my model is very very unique. We have a very lean system, right? Usually, an e-learning would have project managers, they would have graphic designers. When I say have, I mean have on their payroll, right? So they would have project designers, they have uh, managers, all the way the whole corporate ladder kind of thing,
Typical structure, yeah.
right? And that carries a lot of overhead with that. So one of my strategies was, if I was going to go in, I got to go very lean so I can compete at price at the same time as quality. And so my approach was, I have a core team of a lead developer, a lead graphic person, a lead video guy, and myself, and few others. So 4 or 5 core teams. Everyone else, I have a pool of developers on my access, right? So I get to pick them from project to project basis. That's the arrangement I have with them. So there's a bunch of freelancers that I work with. They're in my network. So whenever a project comes, I give them a heads up. They bill me by the hour. So if you consider my pool, that is more than I would say 50 to 100 people in the pool doing different kind of things. But the core team that makes the decisions, that looks after the business, that makes sure the lights are on, everything is on, is about 4 to 5.
That's a very unique kind of thing, which is good. I think a lot of people have this issue is they try to, either one, they're going to be so hesitant to hire anybody because no one else can do this job better than me, or two, that they hire, like you say, too many, and now they're stuck with, like you said, all this extra overhead. And I like your approach of like grabbing a few key people and have a pool of other things that other resources you can pull from depending on the project, right? So, and is it all, I assume it's all based on skill set of this pool, right? Because, for certain projects, even though it may be an e-learning kind of tool, it's going to differ what's required project to project, right? So if you know a particular resource is stronger in one area, okay, we'll use this person for this project, and for another one, maybe someone else altogether, right?
Exactly, exactly. And you get that flexibility with having access to so many people and so many talent, right? And I'd share another story to kind of connect the dots here. Um, when you said having a small team is so when I started Creo Generation, it was just me running the show, right? That's when I realized that I at the beginning, like you said, I said, you know what, I'm a rock star, I can do everything on my own, right? But as it happens, 8 months into it, got burned out, right? And obviously, there's so many things you got to do, a lot of things in your head, so it couldn't scale as a small business. I had to shut my shop basically because I didn't have a team. And then right after that, I actually did open a community organization, right? It was called the Baloch Club Canada. It was the idea was so Baloch is actually also a nation. There are a lot of people just like Italian, Chinese, and also Baloch are kind of like a nation. So we have a small community here in Ontario. So what I try to do is organize that community and just create a platform where we can all. The vision was to really bring everyone together. But what happened was this time I thought with Cryogenation I didn't have a team. Now I'm going to make a huge team. So I reached out to every member of the community. We almost had a team of like 20 people initially. And that too didn't turn out as I expected because it was hard to align everyone with your vision if you have such a huge team, especially to start with. So that project didn't go as expected, and so now I went back to my job, and then when I started my e-learning company, Logicubes, I thought, you know what, I can't expand to 50 people, but at the same time, I don't want to start with just one. So I had to find the right balance that I can sustain and keep the expenses low while I was building my portfolio, while I was growing, while I was scaling. And then that's when the idea of a hybrid model of a sort came into my mind, having a core team that makes the executive decisions. It's always lean, right? That one decision making gets faster, um, becomes efficient, uh, overhead is low, and then you have always have this access to this pool of resources and talent that you can pick on any day and time.
Oh, that's great. So, what are your plans to expand this year? I mean, now that it looks like you're being very successful. You had over 1,000, development hours and stuff like that. You're hitting your projects with no issues at all. Like, how are you going to grow the team? Are you going to maybe grow into another location or anything like that?
Yeah. So location wise, we started from a basement of a house
Like all good businesses start in the basement, right?
in Scarborough. And then eventually we moved up to the first floor, which was just an extension, sort of like a bedroom slash lobby, right? Just to have more space. Partly because it was really cold in the basement, and then and also there was more space. And then we moved to garage after that. So that was our third phase. Worked off a garage for 1 year, and now we actually got our office in Ajax, and so that was phase three. The next step, obviously, is right now we need a bit more uh, marketing and communication expansion. So we're looking for actually getting more people on board that can take our story further to people. And obviously, within the pipeline is also to finally get a real office in the near future, so I can at least the whole core team can have a space to come together and make those collaborative decisions. Although a lot of it now takes place virtually, but it would be nice to have. I think it would be a great progression from where we came from and where we're going. And obviously, we're always trying to grow our clientele. A good thing is a lot of our business is recurring business. So, and that is a testimony to the fact that they're happy with how we serve them. And that is always our agenda. That's always our goal, to make people happy. And you touched upon this as well initially, that, uh, sometimes I just solve people's problem because I enjoy them. That's just who I am. And a lot of that comes back, right? It's almost like you give, and like you said, not everyone is rival. Even competition. They're just like us. Everyone's trying to make their own dent in this universe through their participation. So yeah, that's those are some of the things in the pipeline. The new office that we are scoping, and growth in the clientele, growth in the team, and scaling up.
Where in the office are you looking to potentially move to? I know you said you have an office right now in Ajax, but are you looking? So where is that in your perfect vision? Where would your new office be?
So I think the next office would still be in Ajax. I live in Ajax. I love that it's a,
Same here.
yeah, it's a small town, but it doesn't feel like a small town, right? And everything is so convenient, and it's 5-minute drive to everywhere in Ajax. So and it's close to downtown Toronto, right?
Yeah.
And even the GO train would take you like just 20-25 minutes. You're in Union. So
Mhm.
probably somewhere north of Ajax, where we can get a like a proper office setup. And we're still scoping. There are a lot
Mhm.
of I know last 2 years construction was slow due to COVID,
Yeah.
so it has just picked up, and we're seeing if there's any opportunity.
Yeah, no, it makes sense too. Because, like I said, for listeners, yeah, I'm also based in Ajax as well, and we had a municipal election, I think last week or a couple weeks ago. I've actually had some of the had a mayoral candidate on the show. I even had the
Wow,
current regional Ward 2 councillor here, and I'm just about to land, I guess, another ward councillor as well to come on just to speak on for small business owners here in Ajax. What are their plans on how to actually improve the experience here? And a lot of them are saying the exact same thing. They want to drive more investment within Ajax, within the corporate office kind of look. I mean, because obviously, if you ever been in Ajax, they have a couple of things you're going to notice. One, they really love plazas,
yes,
outdoor plazas. You'd be
yeah,
surprised how they
yeah.
all have,
We don't have
and
malls.
and we have no malls,
Yeah,
unfortunately, but there's one in Pickering and one in Oshawa. But then also some of these other ones, there's a lot of mom and pop shops, which is a good thing, but it's nice to actually get some of that actual investment. We have an Amazon here and we have some other industrial stuff going on, but would be nice to have, let's say, the corporate office of, you know, Logicubes is now invested in Ajax, or, Intel or Nike or something, having a corporate office. Those are the kind of things we're looking for, because we're definitely going to drive a lot of jobs here, because Ajax is generally is like I forgot the term, but we just drive away usually Monday to Friday and then come back to Ajax when we're done, right? So
exactly.
it'd be nice to actually have something in town where people actually just drive around. But anyway, so what is you said you're I've had some guests say that they're allergic to overhead. So what is the kind of like the expenses that you currently have right now for your business that a lot of people don't think of when they think about, oh, e-learning, they just need some computers and that's it, and we just learn how to code and develop, and that's all it is. How expensive could it possibly be? Well, what is it else that you have to worry about when you're doing this?
Yeah, I think when it comes to overhead, some of them that we really have to mindful of are the fixed costs, right? So fixed obviously is we have to have an office, right? And it requires rent, and then obviously the equipment has to be up to date, because we have the laptops, the licenses, the softwares, right? We have to subscribe to all those softwares, regardless if we get projects or not. And one interesting thing about e-learning which I think a lot of big companies, big e-learning companies struggle with, is our project cycle. So what that means is um, when clients decide to convert their either existing trainings, or if they want to create new digital training for their employees, they usually do a lot of debates, a lot of discussions within themselves, and then let's say they set up a start date for the project in the next 30 days. But something happens on the 29th day where they decide to just hold on it, right? And they want to pick it up in the next 60 days or so,
Quarter, yeah,
right? Or
quarter
later,
next year.
exact
Yeah.
next quarter or next fiscal, or you know what, the budget that we had in mind is not enough, so we're just going to wait another year until the next budget comes in. So based on that, what a lot of big companies do is they have a lot of developers, they have a lot of instructional designers, graphic people, they have them on their payroll, right? And that cyclical nature of our, or that erratic nature rather, of the project cycle um, actually forces these companies to keep paying these payroll regardless if there's any project or not, right? So that was a big pain point in these large companies, and they used to have a large pool of developers in house. When I say large, some might have even 5, 10, 15, 20, depending on their size. And these guys charge quite good money. So that is a huge overhead for any big companies, right? So my job, my strategy was to avoid that payroll expense. Hence, I started that hybrid model and that rapid development model, which is why we got a lot of tractions with some of those so-called competitors, the e-learning developing companies, right? Our solution is your overhead with the dev team is so high and your projects are not stable. It's all up and down. Why don't you hire us? So wherever you get a project, we come in as a SWAT team, we land, we fix the project, and we leave. No overhead. We're not on your payroll, right? So that's a solution we kind of brought to the table to them and got accepted by a lot of them. And the rates are reasonable. So so that was our approach of solving that overhead. And like you said, any entrepreneur, when overhead is not a pleasant term, but we kind of turn that into an opportunity that we can solve for a lot of other companies, which work in our favor, and also at the same time keeping our overheads as low as possible. Just make sure that the bare minimum things are covered: the rent of the office, the equipment, the licenses, the pay for the executive committee in a way, but rest of it is all variable. So the moment you switch your overhead from fixed to variable, I think you'll get a lot of play, a lot of margin that you can then pass on to your customers.
Yeah, no, that's great to hear because, I like the fact that you always look for opportunities because if you're a one trick pony, as they used to say, if that's all you did, and for some reason, like you said, it's very, very spastic and you don't even know what's coming next. You never find that level of comfort and you have that no stability, right? So
Exactly.
seeing that thing is that, okay, we know that some companies are going to hold off on their project funding for whatever reason.
Yeah.
So, yep, we'll try to load it up with enough projects in the beginning in the funnel. And once it gets to the point, okay, that's fine. But we got to keep in mind that maybe based on history, a certain percentage of these guys that say they're going to be doing with us might fall out or might delay it. So we got to let's make sure we have our other funnel full of, like you said, reaching out to other fellow e-learning companies and make sure we're capturing some of those ones as well, just to offset that in case we get some of the big ones, which that's really interesting to hear. So excellent. So now let's talk about the industry here itself then. So where do you see the actual e-learning industry right now? And where do you think it's going to go?
This is an interesting conversation about the e-learning industry, because when I sit with the folks from this industry, we have very different points of views. And one of the uh, so one of the ways you can measure a success of e-learning, I'm not sure if you're aware, it's called a Kirkpatrick's, kind of like 4 levels, right? So level 1 and 2 is about that training, how good it is, how you feel about it. So a lot of us feel that e-learning is stuck in level 1 and 2, where There, we are so focused on just making good e-learnings, learner engagement, clicks, and what we do with how do we get the learner to consume this content end to end, right? We forgot the level 3 and 4, which are about business impact, right? So what that means is, let's say you have a company, you invest 50,000, 100,000, 1 million on a learning project, right? But you're not going to do it because you like e-learning, right? Just for the, you don't invest in something for the sake of investing. You need an ROI, a return on investment, right? So right now, I feel like a lot of the e-learning companies are not delivering on that ROI piece. They're so focused on making the learning engaging, entertaining. Um,
Hey you, do you need a voiceover? Well, look no farther. Northway Capital Group has your answer. Commercials and explainer videos, AVR and voicemail, health and wellness, corporate training and e-learning, announcements, documentaries and biography. Contact us on social media or email us at northwaycapitalgroup@gmail.com. Now it's time for tips from the pro.
But anyway, so now we're going to hit tips. Actually, we'll ask one question before you get to tips from the pro. Actually, is I asked this to all my guests. Like, what has been in your entire journey your biggest failure, but also your biggest success so far?
Biggest failure is scaling. I mean, I would like to call it's interesting because we're in a small business kind of podcast, but a part of my team right now would qualify as a small business, but at the same time, my other model makes it a
Right, like
large
the 100
business,
pool of
right?
100, like potentially,
So
right?
exactly, right? Yeah. So the question is it about people on your team, or is it about having access to a lot of people, which qualifies you as a small or large? But that doesn't matter. What matters is I've tried, like I said, I tried a few ventures before, and every time the problem I had was scaling in a sustainable way. Right, that was huge. I think what usually happens is as entrepreneurs, or if anyone was really wanted to start a business, what we do is we go from job to become self-employed. Right, self-employed is when like you said, we start to do everything by ourselves. We do the taxes, we do
Yeah,
the
we're
accounting, we do the
one man shop
operations,
almost.
right?
Yeah.
One man army, exactly, right? And what ends up happening is you're essentially still trading your time for money, right? You're not building an asset that does not depend on you.
So I'm going to continue with the next part of the tips from the pro here. So these is for this, what we're talking about now are for people who may want to walk in similar spaces that you do, and they might have some just general questions about, well, how do I get started and all this sort of stuff. So is there a particular, so question number one, is there a particular e-learning niche that maybe someone who doesn't have the scalability that you have right now? Because like you said, you have access to so many resources. But if someone is saying just starting right now, is there a particular something in the e-training, e-learning niche that they can maybe start with that may not require 100 developers and all these different things, that they can start getting some quick wins as they're scaling up their business?
Yeah, I think first and foremost is be technically proficient. What that means is there are few basic softwares like Articulate, Storyline, Captivate, Lectora. These are the big ones, and then now there are other web-based ones, right? So just have one of the interesting things about being in the e-learning is you gotta love learning yourself, right? You have to have a passion for learning, which I have a large appetite. I read a lot of books. I enjoy learning myself. So be a fast learner, have an appetite for learning, and what used to happen is there were a lot of different roles in e-learning before. So there was a role of instructional designer who would just look at the content, right? And then there's also content creator that would actually give you the content. And then the developer would have take that content, convert it into e-learning. So all the technical stuff. Now a lot of these roles are almost converging, or they're all merging together, right? So now it's best if you sharpen your communication skills. You learn a bit of ID work, right? You learn a bit of technology. You also learn a bit of consultancy. So if you want to really start something, uh, I would say to start off, it's good to be jack of many trades, right? Learn a bit of ID, learn a bit of technology, learn consultancy, learn solving problems through learning, and then keep applying them. And as you refine your skill set, you can slowly start to sell yourself or market yourself as an expert in one thing, but also know all the others, right? So that you can't market yourself just an e-learning developer these days. So if you're starting, you got to have legit. You have to be an e-learning consultant, right? And so that would help
Then
you grow in the market, and over time you will build a lot of credibility.
right. And how big should a portfolio be? Like you're kind of talking like when you're starting to approach clients. I think a lot of, especially beginners, they might be a little bit scared is that, let's say I have no clients. Like, well, what do I do? Like, how am I supposed to try to sell myself to someone where I haven't landed a job yet or something? Like, is subcontracting a thing? Like I said, you said you hire a bunch of subcontractors or like you said, you pull them. Would maybe that be a good learning path to maybe try and develop your own just to get some of those reps in to say, okay, I've done maybe X number of e-learning development projects, and here's what it is. Is that a
Yeah,
thing?
I think I mean my approach has always been about showing value, right? It's not about number of projects you do; it's what problems you have solved, right? So if you can highlight, let's say with I did a project with and when I started with taking free projects. So I took a lot. I did a lot of free work, right? It was for NGOs, it was for corporations, private clients, and my pitch to them was always, I have an idea that can save you money if you convert your in-person trainings into e-learnings, right? And then I would go, okay, this is how you do it. These are the tools I use, and I do it for free. If you're not satisfied, if I don't give you value, then you know what? Just don't pay me. This is for my own portfolio, and they'd be happy to do it. Right? Anyone would be happy to do free stuff.
Free
Exactly.
labor,
Right.
of course. And is there a reasonable number cast that you would suggest someone to start? So let's say they
Hmm.
go to the free route. Obviously, we're not saying do
No,
100
no.
free jobs. Absolutely. What's a
Yeah,
good
yeah. I
number?
would say three to
Three,
five
five,
in your
two,
portfolio, so that
3 to 5.
it just gives you enough. I would say content for you to market yourself. Then you can go ahead. So if I have five projects in my under my belt, then if I come to you, I'll be like, can I solve this problem using this approach with this client? Here's a sample, right? So you have at least 4 to 5 different ways of communicating yourself or your skills to your potential prospect.
Oh, great. And so what resource great, that's a perfect answer. So what resources do you use yourself, Cast, that actually keeps you or that you keep up in the industry
So
with?
I'm part of I've subscribed to a lot of learning channels, learning subscriptions. I attended a few of the conferences I used to attend, but they're actually good conferences. There's one happening this month. It's called was in Toronto. This big one. Maybe DevLearn or eLearn. But this is where all the e-learning people they come in. They discuss new technologies, those kind of things. So so these are good to attend and leader read a lot of be in touch with a lot of folks. So my LinkedIn, I would just add people from different companies learning team and just ask them questions, right? Find mentors, right? People with 10 years of experience, they always share valuable insights, right? So really engage yourself in this industry, learn about it, learn about the gaps there are, learn about opportunities there are, and it is massive. Really, it is just it's an industry that started not so long ago, so there's so much more to go.
Yeah. So let me ask you a couple of these ones here then. So what's the best way to say this? Okay, no, I'll start with this over here. So, what right now, like for e-learning, is there any special insurance that you guys have to worry about, or is it just a general commercial thing? Is all
Yeah,
unique?
if you're obviously renting the space, then you would need your own like tenant insurance, those kind of things. But for the business itself, at least not in Canada, I've heard there might be some American clients they actually ask for some sort of a commercial insurance. I have never had such clients, but some colleagues of mine have actually pointed to that. But in Canada, there's no obviously confidentiality is big, so you got to have procedures and processes in place to ensure that every single piece of work that you get from your client is confidential, right? And a lot of my clients actually want me to be on their project, right? And so I have to respect that, and I ensure that those things won't even go to my team. But for a lot of clients that just want to deal with Logicubes, I ensure that my team has those safety nets in place where we follow the strictest of protocols. But in terms of
Mhm.
different type of insurance, I don't think they're applicable, or at least as far as I know.
Yeah, we always say that, and we always preface this by saying that Cass and I were not
Exactly.
insurance agents. Please contact a licensed one just to find out, depending on whatever
Hmm.
business you're doing,
Yeah, you
you
know
need
your
it or
risk,
not.
you know your
So,
liabilities.
all right,
So yeah, just dig up and see where you need.
excellent. All right, next question here. What are the best billing practices in the e-learning space? Is it a per project thing that you would charge? Is it monthly, or is there anything in between that someone who's getting into this space they should be considering when they start to bill for services? Because I just started asking this question a few episodes ago because I think a lot of people are wondering, like, okay, that's great, but what's the best way to bill? Like, is there a standard within a business or the industry of, okay, you need to only do project billing, or is it monthly retainers, or is it an hourly billing, or
Yeah,
anything
so
like that?
I actually use all of these, but when I started with hourly billing. So what that means is with my clients, we decide on number of hours needed on that project, and then I would just quote them an hourly rate, and then obviously though that expected hour would not necessarily be would end up the same. Usually, it's few hours up or down, but and then you invoice them uh, based on the number of actual hours you've completed or you expect to complete. So that was how I started. That's a standard practice. So if you're starting as an e-learning developer, then you can, I think it's pretty safe to go with the hourly billing. But at the same time, if you are uh, for some of the project I've used fixed, and the problem with fixed is you if you don't know 100%, if you're not certain that you can deliver the project based on the assets. So if everything is very clear, the graphics are provided, the narration is provided, everything is to the
So,
T in a
in a
perfect
perfect
world,
world, right, Cass?
exactly.
Right? If everything was
Because you
perfect,
you don't want a project at a at a fixed rate that you expect to complete in 4 weeks will end up 40 weeks, right? And then you're
yes.
at loss. Or at the same time, it's not fair for the client if a project that initially you scoped 20 weeks, but for whatever reason, it got scaled down to 5 weeks, right? So it is vice versa.
Yeah.
And so fixed is a bit risky. I would say if you need a bit more experience in the industry, you have to know how much room you have to leave for yourself and for the client, that buffer that always comes with the experience. So the safe route is the hourly billing. And now, actually, we are looking into, my team is looking into how we can create some sort of a subscription, right? So that would be,
Oh.
so that's something, a business problem that we have, we're trying to solve. That's something we want to crack, how we can create subscription models in the e-learning world. I don't think it has been done. They, I think there were templates that people sold on subscription basis, but not necessarily complete e-learning solutions. So we'll see how that goes. We still
Mhm.
haven't. We're in the middle of figuring it out. There are a few options we're looking into. So once we crack that, that would be an interesting approach that we never tried before, but I think it's worth testing.
Yeah, I think it's why not? You have enough reps under you, so it's not like it's a brand new thing that you've ever,
Exactly.
you don't have experience in it. So it should be interesting here. So now I remember the question I was going to ask you. So e-learning can encompass a lot of different things across basically almost anywhere. Like I've been to a bunch of e-learnings for my work as well. Is there any particular, I guess, type of industry that there's actually a hidden market that e-learning is probably going to start growing into? And I'll use the example of, oh, would it be like an insurance industry you notice you get more demand, or is in the construction industry there's more demand? Like, where do you see Cass right now? Because obviously in a perfect world you do it for all industries, but do you find like for your clients or you're getting requests are coming from a particular industry that may be an opportunity that people might think
Yeah,
about?
a lot of so there in the e-learning world there's a pre-COVID era and there's a post-COVID, right? So pre-COVID, it was a harder sell to a lot of industries because it was a lot of them were following the status quo. But what happened during the COVID is, well, a lot of things happened, but one of the things was people got a lot of companies accepted remote work, right? So I think uh, the big players pre-COVID were always the financial industry, right? Most of my clients are from the financial industry, the banks, the insurances, because the banks in Canada, they have, I don't know, more than like 30, 40, 50,000 employees. And so they have a large in-house team
A lot of
themselves. Yeah, so
regulation.
a lot of regulations, a lot of compliance trainings, they come in, and it is very expensive to get everyone in the same room on a day, and that expense is not just uh, at that moment. A lot of seat time is also lost, right? So they've picked
Yes.
on e-learning. They're still one of the, I think that they're going to grow, but at the same time now healthcare, right? A lot of healthcare, they went remote, right? Doctors started taking a lot of remote clients, the telehealth, the virtual health. So they've picked on mental health agencies. They used to see a lot of in person, but after COVID, they did a lot of virtual sessions. So they're um, so I think a lot of small and medium companies now that were so bent on in person client facing things, the service industry, they're now picking up e-learning as well. So coaches are a big market because they used to be a lot of uh, in-person coaching. Now I'm seeing a trend in these folks creating their own e-learning modules and selling these videos.
I was about to
Uh,
ask you about that, Cass. Like, because there's like the Udemy's and all these other courses where
exactly.
there's people putting in their own courses. Like, do you see that as a potential opportunity for, like you said, doing it for these people who, like you said, they may have the content in mind of what they're trying to do. They want to put a course out, but they don't got the experience to technically really do it. They just kind of know how to speak it. So great opportunity, I guess, for
Yeah,
some
yeah,
people.
yeah.
So
I think for
interesting.
coaches, like you
And
said, it helps them scale, right? That's one way of scaling.
mhm.
Like I know you've been a personal trainer. You probably know P90X, right? Tony,
Oh yeah, I
right?
even
Tony
used it
Horton,
myself. My wife,
right?
Mrs. K, used it
Or
herself.
Insanity or courses like those, right? They essentially followed these steps and they scaled themselves. They basically copy pasted themselves, right?
Like the George Foreman
Exactly.
grill. That's the what
Yeah.
I used to say. And we're going way back. Some people, young people are like, "What the hell's the George Foreman grill?" That's YouTube it
Yeah,
or Google it.
yeah,
You'll be surprised. I bought a couple of those back in the day.
exactly.
So anyway, so last question we have here on tips from the pro here is what is your best strategy for dealing with, I'm gonna give you a two-prong one, for difficult clients, but also difficult employees? How do you best navigate? Because eventually, the people who want to get into this, they're going to have to deal with clients and they're going to have to deal with employees. So, how do you deal with that?
Communication, transparency. I think I can't stress enough the importance of communication. I think we can't hide in silos. Those are old time businesses, right? We have to uh, any problem that arises has to be addressed, has to be communicated in a very respectful manner, obviously, and understanding that we're all aligned to the vision. So constantly reminding people what the vision is for your organization and or yourself, if you're self-employed, if you're starting up, if you want to hire someone, which by the way is one of the biggest challenges. We can have a whole podcast just on hiring, right? And so conflicts are bound to come, they're bound to rise, but the way you handle them is open communication, right? Hey, I'm not here to judge you, you're not here to judge me, we have a problem to solve. What is happening, right? Is it an information problem? Are you missing, is there a skill set gap? Is there a knowledge gap? Right? How can I best support? How can I set you up for success? Right? At the end of the day, it's about giving value.
Mhm.
Right? The problem at hand is bigger than the argument that I have between you and I. So that includes a client or anyone. Right? So even with my clients, I'm very transparent. If there's things that I can't do, if there are things that the technology can't deliver, I ensure that I communicate that to them in a very transparent manner, right? And at the same time, if there are things that are not making sense, if because most of the time what happens in our industry is the client wants everything yesterday, right? They
Yeah,
right. So
absolutely.
how we address that is obviously really just telling them that, you know what, e-learning takes time, it takes steps, there are people involved, there are processes involved, and oftentimes they do understand, right? So when emotions are really charged up, when they're high, the first thing you got to do is just, you know what, hey buddy, let's take a step back, let's calm down, let's see what the problem is, right? You have a problem, it seems like you have a problem, it seems like I can't understand you, so let's talk about it, let's see how it goes. So this is one of the big skills for any entrepreneur is really open communication, trying to look at the big prize. Don't worry about, you know, it's not about today,
Mhm.
it's about what we can deliver tomorrow.
Exactly. No, and couple last couple of more lighthearted questions before we hit the rapid fire round here. What has been your funniest story running your company?
Funniest story. It actually happened when I quit my full-time job, or when I was about to quit my job. I wanted to go full time on my focus on my business, right? But it wasn't easy. It was extremely hard, and I remember when I tried to dial that call with my manager, I was literally sweating, right? I turned red, super nervous. Like how would I say that I'm quitting my job? And if she asks why, my answer would be, I don't know, I just want to start my own company, right? So that was nerve wracking. I picked up the phone, I called my manager, I said, you know what, she wasn't expecting it. I sent her an email. I said, I will, I have an important thing to say, and can we set up a time? And so we had a meeting. I picked up the call. I said, you know what? I decided to quit. I decided to leave in 2 weeks and start my own. So there was almost a 5 to 6 second of silence on the other hand. And that was the longest silence of my life, right? You can imagine, I'm like, shit, man, what's happening now? You know what? I knew it. I shouldn't have made this call. Everything just coming to your mind in
In
five to
those
seven
5 to 7
seconds.
seconds, all that's
Exactly,
going
right?
through your
And
mind
then
right now.
sweating profusely and just everything is there, the heart rate and all the anxiety and whatnot. And then after those 6 to 7 second, she says, wow, that's amazing. I said, you know, really? To myself, not to her. Like, oh, that wasn't that hard. And she said, when are you, but you're going to be available for some contract work, right? And that was a hit from me. I'm like, whoa, I wasn't expecting that. Right. And then,
Did you take her
yeah, I
up on
said,
that
you know what?
offer?
Of
Like for
course.
contract
And
work?
she said, whenever your shop is up and ready, just shoot me an email and we'll send you some work. Right. So that was
Wow.
like a huge relief. And then we kept talking and did our goodbyes and whatnot. But after that call, even today when I think about it, it just you know, I laugh at it. Right? I said, you know what? It's interesting how we think of a situation and then it might not exist in reality. Right? It could be
We make it seem worse than
exactly.
it
It becomes
really
a
would be,
monster in our
right?
head.
Yeah, I find it funny. It's like when I use the analogy, like when you get a phone call or now a phone call or a text or whatever. It's like, oh, we need to talk. That's never
Yeah,
usually a good
exactly.
thing, right? Because if it wasn't serious, like in a bad way, they could have just called or texted you or whatever, no problem. But when you hear that, you're like, oh, and what's tough is if it's in a work environment, I'm surprised she didn't clue in to say, I need to say something. Can we set some time? Because I'm thinking if I was the manager there, I'm like, uh-oh, something's going on with Cass. Does he need to step away?
Yeah.
Is he going to leave? Is he having an issue with somebody? Do we need to get HR involved? All these different things are playing through my head right now, just thinking about it. And it's funny, like you said. So last question before we hit the rapid fire around here. What is your best advice, Cass? Because been doing this for a while. How do you balance work life?
Yeah, that's a big one, right? So when you start your journey, especially if you choose the self-employment route, then the work life gets out of the window, right? Because you're doing everything, you're running everything. Um, I remember working 16, 18, 19 hour a day initially, right? And then uh, once I learned from a lot of mentors, I met a lot of people in the industry from the business side that business is all about scaling, right? Your value is about reaching the maximum people. If you want to reach there, you can't do it running on your own time because you only have 24 hours a day, right? So when I learned that, when I learned how to scale, when I learned how to build teams, I realized my work-life balance started getting better, right? I didn't have to do the taxing myself, taxation. So that saved me at least a day or two every fiscal, right? I didn't have to take all the calls, so that saved me a few hours. I didn't have to do all the admin work, that saved me a couple of more hours, right? So as you
Mhm.
build your team, as you scale, you will have, you will just realize that you would need only so many hours a day to do that focused work, that strategy work, right?
Mhm.
Those big thinkings, those big decisions. They don't need a lot of time. What takes up time is all the admin, all the operations, all the financials, all the payrolls, all the extra stuff, right? So if you find a way to
Yeah.
outsource those and just stick to the core decisions of how to constantly create value for your client, I think that, to me at least, that brought a lot of work-life balance and gave me enough time I can spend with my family. I love traveling. I haven't traveled in a couple of years, obviously because of COVID and all that. I didn't travel overseas, but I have plans to do it soon. And then,
Wow.
yeah, that's pretty much it. I think the moment you realize that you can do everything on your own, that saves up a lot of time, and also it stops you from going insane.
Well, going insane is not a good thing. So yeah, absolutely. I'm totally on board with you on that. So hey, do you need an error-free website? Do you need transcription that's accurate and on time? Would you like to remove noise from your video or audio recording? Do you need a spokesperson for your business? If so, we can help. At Northway Capital Group, we are happy to announce that we are now providing website testing services, audio transcriptions, and audio cleanup, as well as spokesperson services. We would love to help you on your next project. Contact us for more information at northwaycapitalgroup@gmail.com.
Now it's time for the rapid fire round.
All right. That's my son.
Oh,
That's
nice.
his part of it. So
There you
I have a
go.
daughter and a son. She did
Yeah,
the
sure.
what you heard. But all right, these are the more lighthearted questions there, Cass. So it's more like see how quickly we can get through some of these as we're almost at the end of the episode here. So all right, first question: what would the 15-year-old self be thinking you'd be doing right now?
I would be a doctor actually, because that's what I was socialized to become.
You are kind of like a doctor when it comes to the
Yeah,
e-learning
I'm
space. You said
a
firefighter,
doctor.
but
Yeah.
also a doctor. So all right, what posters were on your wall when you were a teenager?
Uh, football, soccer posters. Yeah, big
Soccer,
Messi
wow.
fan.
Any lady?
Yeah,
Ah, Messi. Okay. Yeah, I was gonna say either player or
yeah.
team because I don't know. Some people like to put both, but interesting. Okay. Worst movie sequel ever made.
You see, I'm actually so bad because probably watch 2 movies a year, right? So
Yeah.
I don't know. I this is something. Let's see, maybe sequel. I know I watched a few series, if that qualify.
Sure.
Yeah,
Throw that
I
out there.
think I didn't watch this one, but a lot of my friends do, and they hate the sequel of Lord of the Rings. Not that one, but the Hobbits.
Oh, the
Yeah, the
TV
TV
show.
show. The
Oh,
Hobbits, yeah.
the
They said it could
Hobbits.
have been done in just one,
Oh.
right?
Oh, wait, sorry. You're talking about like the Hobbit series where those 3 sets of
Yeah, yeah,
movies
yeah.
from Lord of the
Yeah,
Rings. So they
Lord
had
of the
Lord of
Ring
the
is
Rings
good,
and they had the Hobbits thing,
right?
but the Hobbits that
Yeah,
came
yeah, yeah,
afterwards.
and I find it okay, but a lot of people said that it's I too find it's too stretched. I mean, can tell the whole story in 1 or 2 hours, but
No, did you ever watch the Harry
no.
Potter series movies? Okay, well, I'll flash you that, but I'll say that I wasn't bad. There was one movie. There was like a 7-book thing, and it was a really long one. And I caught it during the 4th movie, which I had to watch the whole thing over again with the wife because she's the one who read all the books. But I'll say that the worst sequel I ever saw. Do you remember the movie? I don't know if you saw this, Mortal Kombat. It was back in 1995.
I think I saw one of them,
Well, if you saw the first one, that would have been the best
probably.
one. The minute they made the second one, I think a few years later, half the cast had been recasted for the
Wow.
movie. They had maybe only 1 or 2 characters from the original movie, and I remember Mortal Kombat because I wasn't a huge video game fan, but I did enjoy playing it. But I remember that first movie was the first movie I ever went to see it twice in theaters because I liked the first movie. And then when the second came out and I heard that all these people were changing, I didn't watch it. And then I ended up watching it when it was on, like, I don't know, maybe many years later. I looked at it, I'm like, wow, that was really, really bad. So worst ever sequel ever. But all right, next question here. If you had a sandwich named after you, what would be on it and what would you call
Oh,
it?
that would be roast beef, obviously. Yeah.
Roast
So
beef?
it's gonna be roast beef. You know the play of the bologna sandwich. So it's gonna be roast beef baluchi sandwich. Right?
Ooh,
Yeah.
Baluchi sandwich. Any condiments?
I'm not a
Just a roast
condiment guy.
beef
I go
and
straight.
what
Oh,
about the
bread
bread?
has to be multigrain. Yeah.
Multigrain with a roast beef and we'll call it the
Roast beef
Baluchi.
sandwich. That's
There
it.
we go. Love it. Put on a shirt. All right, last question we have here, Kaz. Like I said, what is your theme song and why? So that song hits, you're walking down the street, that song hits, people know Kaz is coming.
My theme song would be actually the Mission Impossible music.
Really?
Right? I don't know. It's very catchy. It puts him in that groove. There's also it
Pumps
pumps
you
me up.
up.
It's very yeah. I listen to a lot of uh, instrumental, so that's one of them. And also I'm a
Nice.
bit of old school that way. So one of my favorite songs to put me in that zone is always, I don't know why, but it's from Frank Sinatra. It's I Did It My Way. Yeah,
Ah, I was gonna say. I was gonna
My
say
Way.
My
Yeah,
Way, isn't
yeah,
it? I'm
My
like,
Way always.
wow. Frank
Whenever
Sinatra.
that plays, I just like you said, that's my zone.
Wow, that's great. So any other final tips you have, Cass, for any entrepreneur, whether it's trying to get into e-learning or just any business in general?
Yeah, identify problems. There are tons of them, right? And find people. I one of the people that I really follow in my entrepreneurial journey is Sir Richard Branson. Huge admirer of him. Wrote multiple letters to him, never heard back, but I and I hope
Bastard, you didn't
everybody's
respond back.
have great admiration, get great respect. So and the reason is he solves huge problems, right? In a very so one tip would be find, and there's so many problems in the world, man. If you think there's no opportunities, then you're saying there's no problem in the world, right? Find a problem, add value, solve it, and scale it so it reaches as many people as possible. That way, it gives you satisfaction at the end. It improves your bank balance, which obviously is something we all aspire as entrepreneurs. But more than anything, you play your part in making some difference, right? So that's what I would
No,
like to close.
that's great to hear. That's great to hear. But all right, Cass. So where can people reach out to you if they want to do business with you, or they want to pick your brain for anything? Where can the
Yeah, I'm
listeners find you?
very easily accessible through LinkedIn. Although these days I'm pretty bogged with a lot of my work, so if I don't respond right away, please do note that at some point I will respond. I would love to connect with like-minded people. I love to connect with entrepreneurs, and I'm also part of the Ajax Pickering Board of Trade. So if you are in that, if we probably meet in the networking events, feel free to stop by. My website logicubes.com has a has a form you can fill out that comes to my team's inbox if you have any e-learning specific questions, or if you want to get any clients. I'm not on social media. Like I said, I'm a bit old school. So, but you do find me on LinkedIn. You do can reach me through my website. Those are two primary channels.
All right, I'll make sure to put in the show notes who can
Perfect.
reach out to you there. So thanks again, Cass, for
I
being on the
appreciate it.
show.
I hope I added value to your time.
Do you have a small business story to share? The S.M.E Stories podcast is looking for entrepreneurs to share their tales of success, failure, and everything. If you're interested in being a guest on our show or know someone would be a great fit, please contact us at northwaycapitalgroup@gmail.com. That's northwaycapitalgroup@gmail.com.
Thank you for listening to the S.M.E Stories podcast, which is owned by Northway Capital Group. Please follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Northway Capital Group.